Clara Weston watched Samuel Callahan tear their marriage contract in half. 23 days of travel, 2,000 miles of hope, gone in the time it took paper to rip. "I can't marry a woman who's already failed at keeping a husband alive," he said, not meeting her eyes. Behind him, 3 children stared from the doorway. The smallest one, barely 4 years old, clutched a ragged doll and whispered, "Papa, is she gonna be our new mama? Stay until the end to see how a rejected widow became the heart of a broken family." Comment your city so I can see how far this story travels, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The stagecoach door swung open and Clara Weston's boots hit frozen ground for the first time in 23 days. Wyoming, December 1878. The end of the line in every way that mattered. "You, the bride." A man's voice cut through the bitter wind. Clara turned. Samuel Callahan stood 10 feet away, hat pulled low, shoulders broad enough to block out the gray sky behind him. He looked nothing like the photograph he'd sent. That man had seemed gentle, maybe even hopeful. This man looked like he'd buried hope alongside his wife and hadn't bothered digging up either one. "I'm Clara Weston." She kept her voice steady despite the cold crawling up her spine. "From Boston." "I know where you're from." He didn't move closer, didn't offer to take her bag, just stood there assessing her like livestock at auction. "You're shorter than I expected. You're ruder than I expected." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or irritation. Hard to tell with men like him. "We need to talk," he said, "before we go anywhere." Clara's stomach dropped. She'd heard stories about mail-order arrangements gone wrong. Women left stranded in strange towns. Women who disappeared entirely. Talk about what Mr. Callahan... Inside. He jerked his head toward a small building behind the station. "It's too cold for this conversation." The room he led her to was barely warmer than outside. A pot-bellied stove sat in the corner, giving off more smoke than heat. Samuel closed the door and stood with his back against it, arms crossed, face unreadable. "Your letters," he said. "What about them? You left something out." Clara's heart began to pound. She knew what was coming, had known since Cheyenne, when she'd finally worked up the courage to send that last letter, the one that told the truth. "I told you everything that matters," she said carefully. "Did you..." Samuel reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper, her handwriting. Her confession. "This says your husband died 2 years ago. That's fine. Lots of widows out here." "Then what's the problem?" "The problem, Mrs. Weston, is the part where you mention losing a child you were carrying when your husband died." Clara's throat closed up. "The problem," Samuel continued, his voice getting harder, "is that you didn't mention this until you were already on your way here, until it was too late for me to find someone else. I didn't think... You didn't think it mattered." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I've got 3 children who need a mother. 3 children whose mother died giving birth to the youngest. And you want me to marry a woman who couldn't even..." He stopped himself, breathed, started again. "I can't take that risk. The doctors said it was the grief, the shock of losing William so suddenly. It doesn't mean anything good." Samuel unfolded the marriage contract, the one they'd both signed, through letters, through lawyers, through hope. "I'm sorry you came all this way for nothing." And then he tore it in half. The sound of ripping paper was the loudest thing Clara had ever heard. "Mr. Callahan, the next stage east won't come through until spring. Roads are closing." He stuffed the torn contract back in his pocket. "There's a boarding house in town. I'll pay for a week. After that, you're on your own." "Spring?" Clara's voice cracked. "That's 4 months from now." "Should have thought about that before you lied." "I didn't lie. I just what?" Samuel stepped closer, and Clara saw something in his eyes that looked like pain masquerading as anger. "Just hoped I wouldn't care. Just figured once you got here, I'd have to take you anyway. I figured you might understand." The words came out sharper than she intended. I figured a man who lost his wife might know something about grief, about doing desperate things to survive. Samuel went still. My husband died in my arms. Clara continued, her voice shaking now. He got sick helping patients during an outbreak, wouldn't stop, wouldn't rest. And when he finally collapsed, I was 3 months along with our first child. Our only child. She pulled off her glove and pressed her palm against her stomach, a gesture that had become habit in those terrible weeks. I lost the baby a month after William. The doctors said my body couldn't hold on to anything while my heart was dying. And then his family threw me out, said I was bad luck, said I'd killed their son by not stopping him from working. Samuel's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. So yes, Mr. Callahan, I left that part out of my earlier letters, because I was afraid, because I had nowhere else to go, because I thought maybe. Her voice broke. Maybe out here none of that would matter. Maybe I could start over. The silence stretched between them, filled with cold air and colder truths. I'm sorry for what happened to you, Samuel finally said. His voice had lost some of its edge, but none of its resolve. Truly. But I can't marry you. I can't risk my children getting attached to someone who might... He stopped, swallowed. Who might not be able to give them what they need. And what do they need? Stability. Someone who won't leave. I'm not planning on leaving. Neither was their mother. The words hung in the air like frost. Clara understood then. This wasn't just about her. This was about Samuel Callahan being so terrified of loss that he'd rather be alone than risk feeling it again. Then what am I supposed to do? She asked quietly. 4 months in a strange town, with no money, no friends, no... That's not my problem. You made it your problem when you sent for me. I sent for a wife, not a... He stopped again, and Clara saw him fighting with himself. Not someone who's already broken. The word hit her like a slap. Broken. Is that what she was? Is that what everyone saw when they looked at her? Before she could respond, the door burst open. A girl stood in the doorway, 11, maybe 12 years old, with dark hair escaping a messy braid and eyes that burned with barely contained fury. Papa. The word was an accusation. Who is this? Ruth. I told you to wait at the mercantile. I saw the stage come in. I saw you bring her here. Ruth's gaze swept over Clara with undisguised hostility. She's the one from the letters, ain't she? The one who was supposed to be our new mama. Ruth. Is she staying or not? Samuel's silence was answer enough. Ruth's expression shifted. Not relief, Clara realized. Something more complicated. Something that looked almost like disappointment trying to hide behind anger. Good, Ruth said, but her voice wavered. We don't need her anyway. We don't need anyone. She turned and ran before Samuel could stop her. Ruth. He moved toward the door, then stopped, caught between going after his daughter and dealing with the mess he'd made. Go, Clara said. Go after her. This conversation isn't finished. Yes, it is. Clara picked up her carpet bag with numb fingers. You've made your decision, Mr. Callahan. Now go take care of your daughter. Samuel stared at her for a long moment. Then he was gone, leaving Clara alone in the cold room with a torn contract and a shattered future. The boarding house was called Mrs. Mueller's, and the woman who ran it took one look at Clara and knew exactly what had happened. Another one, Mrs. Mueller said not unkindly. Third this year. Third what? Mail-order bride that didn't work out. The older woman showed Clara to a small room on the second floor. Clean bed washstand window overlooking the main street. Samuel Callahan. Clara nodded, too tired to be surprised. That man. Mrs. Mueller shook her head. He's sent for 3 women in the past year. Finds something wrong with every one of them. Too young, too old, wrong religion, wrong something. He said I was broken. Did he now? Mrs. Mueller's eyes softened. Honey, There ain't a person in this territory who isn't broken somehow. That's why we came here, to put ourselves back together where no one knew us before." Clara sat on the edge of the bed, her legs finally giving out. "He paid for a week." "I know. He always does. What happened to the others? The other women he rejected?" Mrs. Mueller was quiet for a moment. "One went back east when spring came. One found work at the saloon, and before you ask, not that kind of work. She plays piano, and one—" She paused. "One married a rancher south of here, has 2 babies now, happy as anything." "So there's hope." "There's always hope, Mrs. Weston. Question is whether you're strong enough to wait for it." Clara thought about the long journey from Boston. The trains, the stagecoaches, the endless rattling miles of prairie and mountain and sky. She'd survived all of that. She could survive this. "I'm strong enough," she said. "Good." Mrs. Mueller moved toward the door. "Because you're gonna need it. Winter here is hard, and Samuel Callahan—" She paused. "That man is harder. But his children, those children need someone. Anyone can see it. Question is whether he'll let them have what they need." After Mrs. Mueller left, Clara lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. The wind howled outside, rattling the window in its frame. Somewhere in this town, 3 children were going to sleep without a mother. Again. And somewhere Samuel Callahan was probably congratulating himself on dodging another disaster. Broken, he'd called her. Maybe she was. But broken things could be fixed. Broken things could become something new. Clara closed her eyes and made herself a promise. She wasn't going to fall apart. She wasn't going to hide in this room and wait for spring like some kind of wounded animal. She was going to survive. She was going to prove Samuel Callahan wrong. And maybe, just maybe, she was going to show him what broken really looked like. The next morning, Clara woke to shouting in the street below. She was at the window before she was fully awake, peering through frost-covered glass at the commotion below. A wagon had stopped in front of the mercantile. Samuel Callahan's wagon, she realized, recognizing the broad shoulders of the man climbing down. But he wasn't alone. A boy sat in the wagon bed, 8 or 9 years old, thin and pale, coughing hard enough that Clara could hear it through the closed window. Each cough seemed to tear through his small body, bending him double. Samuel lifted the boy out of the wagon like he weighed nothing. The boy's face was red, his breathing labored even from this distance. "Doc!" Samuel's voice carried up to Clara's window. "Doc Patterson, I need you." An older man emerged from a building across the street, bag in hand. Clara watched him examine the boy right there in the street, pressing his ear to the small chest, frowning at whatever he heard. "How long has he been like this?" the doctor asked. "Started last night. Thought it was just the usual cough, but then he couldn't catch his breath and—" Samuel's voice cracked. "Can you help him?" Clara was moving before she made a conscious decision. Down the stairs, through the boarding house door, into the bitter cold without her coat. "Mrs. Weston!" Samuel saw her approaching, and his expression closed like a door slamming shut. "This isn't your concern." "I spent 2 years helping my husband treat patients." Clara ignored him, kneeling beside the boy. "What's his name?" "Elijah." "Eli." The boy answered himself between coughs. Who are you?" "I'm Clara. Can I listen to your chest, Eli?" The boy looked at his father. Samuel's jaw was tight, but after a moment, he gave a short nod. Clara pressed her ear to Eli's back, the way she'd watched William do 100 times. She heard what she'd feared, a wet rattling sound like water in places water shouldn't be. "Is this the first time this has happened?" she asked. "No." Samuel's voice was rough. "He's had weak lungs since he was little. Usually gets bad in winter." "Has he been treated with steam eucalyptus camphor?" Doc Patterson looked at her with new interest. "You know medicine." "My husband was a physician in Boston. I assisted him." "The lung weakness runs in the family," the doctor said. "His mother had it too before she—" He stopped, glancing at Samuel. "Before she died." Clara understood. There are treatments, she said. Newer ones, steam inhalation with certain herbs, chest compresses to break up the congestion, keeping him warm and upright instead of lying flat. She's not a doctor, Samuel cut in. She's just what Mr. Callahan? Clara stood facing him. Just a broken woman you rejected yesterday. You're right. I'm not a doctor, but your son is struggling to breathe, and unless there's another physician in this town, I might be the best option you have. Doc Patterson cleared his throat. She's not wrong, Samuel. I've done what I can for Eli. The medicines I have, they help, but they don't fix anything. If Mrs. Weston has seen other treatments. Samuel looked at his son. Eli was watching Clara with something like hope in his fever-bright eyes. Please, Papa, Eli whispered. I don't want to die like Mama. The words seemed to strike Samuel like a physical blow. For a moment, his entire facade cracked, and Clara saw the terrified father underneath the cold exterior. You're not going to die, Samuel said, his voice rough. I won't let you. Then let me help, Clara said quietly. Not because you owe me anything. Not because I'm trying to change your mind about the marriage, just because a child is sick, and I might be able to make him better. Samuel stared at her for a long moment. The wind howled around them, and Eli coughed again, a horrible wet sound that seemed to shake his entire small body. Fine, Samuel said finally. One day. You help him today, and then we're done. Where do you live? 5 miles north, the Callahan Ranch. Then we need to go now. He needs to be somewhere warm. Samuel lifted Eli back into the wagon without another word. Clara climbed up beside them, and for the first time since arriving in Wyoming, she felt something other than despair. Purpose. The ride to the ranch took nearly an hour over frozen roads. Clara kept Eli propped against her, helping him breathe, talking to him quietly to keep him calm. Are you the lady from Papa's letters? Eli asked between coughs. I was. Things didn't work out. Because you're broken. Clara flinched. Did your father tell you that? No. Ruth did. She said Papa only wants perfect people, and nobody's perfect, so he'll never find anyone. Ruth is your sister. The oldest. She's mad all the time now. Eli's voice dropped to a whisper. Since Mama died, she's mad at everything, especially Papa. And you have another sister. Nettie. She's 4. She doesn't remember Mama at all. Eli coughed again, but it was softer this time. She keeps asking Papa for a new one, a new Mama. He tells her to stop asking. Clara's heart clenched. 4 years old and asking for a mother. The same age she'd imagined her own child would be now if things had been different. Eli, she said carefully, your father has his reasons for being the way he is. I know, he's scared. Eli looked up at her with eyes far too old for his young face. He's scared all the time. He just pretends he's angry so nobody can tell. Clara thought about that for the rest of the ride. A man so scared of loss that he pushed away anyone who might matter. A man raising 3 children alone because he couldn't bear the thought of watching someone else leave. It didn't excuse what he'd done to her, but it made it a little easier to understand. The ranch house appeared through the swirling snow like a ghost. Sturdy log construction smoke rising from 2 chimneys, fences stretching into the white distance. Ruth was waiting on the porch, arms crossed, face stormy. You brought her here? Ruth's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Papa, you said, she's helping your brother. That's all. Samuel lifted Eli from the wagon. Now get inside before you freeze. I'm not going inside with her. Ruth Elizabeth Callahan, I don't have time for this. You never have time for anything except telling us what we can't have. Ruth spun and stalked inside, slamming the door hard enough to shake snow from the roof. Clara followed Samuel into the house where warmth finally wrapped around her frozen fingers. The front room was simple but clean. A fireplace-worn furniture, a table with 4 chairs. And standing by the kitchen doorway, clutching a one-armed doll, was the smallest Callahan. Nettie. The child stared at Clara with enormous blue eyes. She had honey-colored curls and a face that looked like it had been designed specifically to break hearts. "Papa?" Nettie's voice was barely a whisper. "Is that the lady who is gonna be our mama?" Samuel set Eli down on a bench near the fire. "She's not staying, Nettie. She's just helping Eli feel better." "But why can't she stay?" "We've talked about this." "But I want a mama." Nettie's lower lip trembled. "Everyone has a mama except us." "Nettie. Livy Parker has a mama. Tommy Morton has a mama. Even the Mueller twins have a mama, and their real mama died too. It's not fair, Papa." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. This child, this perfect, desperate child, standing there with her broken doll and her bottomless need. "Sweetheart," Clara said gently, kneeling to Nettie's level. "Your papa is doing the best he can." "But it's not enough." Nettie said it matter-of-factly, the way children say terrible truths. "He can't braid hair right, he burns the biscuits, and he never sings at bedtime like mamas are supposed to." "Nettie, that's enough." Samuel's voice was strained. "I'm just telling the truth, Papa. You always say we should tell the truth." Clara looked up at Samuel. His face was a mask of controlled pain. Every word from his daughter was a knife, and he was trying so hard not to bleed. "I need hot water," Clara said, standing, "and clean cloths. And if you have any dried eucalyptus or chamomile, I need those too." Samuel hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Ruth knows where everything is." "Ruth." The older girl appeared in the doorway, still radiating hostility. "What?" "Show Mrs. Weston where the herbs are. Help her get what she needs." "I'm not helping her." "Ruth. She's not our mama. She's never going to be our mama. Why should I help her?" "Because your brother is sick." Samuel's voice went cold and hard. "Because he could get worse. Because if something happens to him, and you didn't help when you could have, you'll have to live with that for the rest of your life." Ruth's face went pale. For a moment she looked like a child instead of the angry near adult she was trying to be. "Fine," she whispered. "Follow me." Clara followed Ruth into the kitchen where a wall of cabinets held jar after jar of dried herbs. Clara recognized Sarah Callahan's handwriting on the labels. Careful, precise, the work of a woman who knew exactly what she had and where to find it. "Your mother did this?" Clara asked. "Don't talk about her." "I wasn't trying to." "You're not her." Ruth spun to face Clara, eyes blazing. "You'll never be her. I don't care how much Nettie wants a mama or how sick Eli gets. You're not part of this family. You're just someone passing through." "You're right," Clara said quietly. "I'm not your mother. I'm not trying to be." "Then why are you here?" "Because a little boy is struggling to breathe and I might be able to help." Ruth's jaw worked. "And then you'll leave. Your father has made it very clear that's what he wants." "What do you want?" The question caught Clara off guard. No one had asked her what she wanted in a very long time. "I want to be useful," she said finally. "I want to feel like my life still means something. I want—" She stopped, surprised by the honesty rising in her throat. "I want to stop feeling broken." Ruth stared at her. Something shifted in the girl's expression, not softening exactly, but recognition, like seeing a reflection in unexpected glass. "Mama used to say broken things can be fixed," Ruth said quietly. "She fixed a lot of things." "She sounds like a wise woman." "She was the best person I ever knew." Ruth's voice cracked. "And then she died, and Papa stopped being Papa, and everything fell apart." Clara reached out, then stopped, uncertain. "Ruth?" "Just take the herbs." Ruth shoved a handful of jars into Clara's arms. "Help Eli, and then leave us alone." She pushed past Clara and disappeared deeper into the house. Clara stood alone in Sarah Callahan's kitchen, holding Sarah Callahan's herbs, surrounded by the ghost of a woman who had clearly been loved beyond measure. No wonder Samuel was terrified. No wonder he couldn't let anyone in. How do you replace irreplaceable? But as Clara carried the herbs back to where Eli lay, coughing by the fire, she realized something. She wasn't trying to replace anyone. She was just trying to help. Just trying to matter. And right now, that was enough. The steam treatment took hours. Clara boiled water with eucalyptus and chamomile, creating a tent of blankets over Eli's head to trap the healing vapor. She talked him through each breath, keeping him calm, when the coughing fits came, helping him find the rhythm that would open his lungs. Samuel watched from across the room, never leaving, never approaching. Twice, she caught him with his eyes closed, lips moving silently. Praying, she realized. This hard, cold man was praying for his son. Nettie fell asleep on the rug near Eli's feet, her broken doll clutched tight. Ruth pretended to read by the window, but her eyes kept drifting to her brother, fear poorly hidden beneath her practiced hostility. As darkness fell outside and the fire burned low, Eli's breathing finally began to ease. The horrible rattling faded. The coughing fits grew further apart. Color returned to his pale cheeks. "He's better," Clara said softly, pressing her hand to Eli's forehead. "The fever's breaking." Samuel crossed the room in 3 strides, kneeling beside his son. He pressed his own hand to Eli's forehead, then his cheek, then just held him, careful and desperate. "You saved him." Samuel's voice was barely audible. "I helped. His body did the rest." Samuel looked up at her, and for the first time, Clara saw him clearly. Not the cold man who'd torn up their contract. Not the angry rancher who'd called her broken. Just a father terrified of losing another piece of his shattered family. "Thank you," he said. The words seemed to cost him something. "You're welcome." They stayed like that for a long moment. The 4 of them gathered around the fire while the wind howled outside and the world went white with snow. Then Nettie stirred, rubbed her eyes, and looked up at Clara with sleepy confusion. "Are you staying now?" the little girl asked. Clara looked at Samuel. He looked away. "I don't know, sweetheart," Clara said honestly. "That's not up to me." Nettie considered this with 4-year-old gravity. Then she reached up and took Clara's hand. "I hope you stay," she whispered. "I really, really hope you stay." Clara squeezed the small fingers, feeling something crack open in her chest. "Me too," she whispered back. "Me too." Samuel didn't speak to Clara for 3 days after Eli's fever broke. He left before dawn each morning, returning only when darkness made work impossible. He ate his meals standing by the door, never sitting at the table where Clara now fed the children. He passed her in hallways without acknowledgement, as if she were furniture rather than flesh. But he didn't send her away. On the 4th morning, Clara woke to find Ruth standing at the foot of her bed, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Papa wants to see you," Ruth said, "in the barn." "Now," he said, "now." Clara dressed quickly, her fingers clumsy with cold and nerves. Whatever Samuel Callahan wanted to say, she suspected it wouldn't be pleasant. The barn was warmer than she expected, heated by the bodies of horses and cattle crowded together against the winter. Samuel stood near a workbench, his back to her hands, busy with something she couldn't see. "Close the door," he said without turning. Clara obeyed. "Ruth said you wanted to speak with me." "I've been thinking." He still didn't turn around. "About what happened with Eli." "He's much better. The coughing fits have... I know how he is. I'm his father." Clara fell silent. Samuel finally turned to face her. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, dark circles under his eyes, stubble shadowing his jaw, shoulders bowed under invisible weight. "I made a mistake," he said. Clara's heart stuttered. What kind of mistake? Sending for you in the first place. He held up a hand before she could respond. Not because of you, because of me. I'm not fit to be anyone's husband. I thought I could do it. Find a mother for my children, give them what they need. But every time I try, I find some reason to push the woman away. So the other brides Mrs. Mueller mentioned, all perfectly good women, all sent packing because I couldn't stomach the thought of replacing Sarah. Samuel's voice cracked on his dead wife's name. And now you're here trapped for the winter, and I've got no idea what to do about it. Clara chose her next words carefully. What do you want to do? I want my wife back. I want my children to stop looking at me like I'm failing them. I want to sleep through one night without dreaming about the sound she made trying to breathe at the end. He laughed bitter and broken. None of that's going to happen. Samuel, don't. He held up his hand again. I'm not looking for comfort. I'm trying to make you an offer. Clara waited. Stay through winter, Samuel said. Not as my wife, we both know that's not happening. But the children need teaching. Ruth's falling behind. Eli can barely read. Nettie doesn't know her letters at all. You want me to be their teacher. I want you to earn your keep instead of sitting in that boarding house spending money I can't afford. His jaw tightened. Room and board in exchange for lessons. Separate arrangements, separate lives. Come spring, I'll pay your passage wherever you want to go. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't acceptance. But it was something. And the children, Clara asked. What do I tell them about why I'm here? Tell them the truth. You're their teacher, nothing more. Nettie already asked if I was going to be her mama. Samuel flinched. Then tell her no. Can you really ask me to break a 4-year-old's heart? Her heart's already broken, Mrs. Weston. Has been since the day she was born, and her mother died bringing her into this world. Samuel's voice went rough. One more disappointment won't kill her. Clara stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time the depth of his self-hatred. This man didn't just grieve his wife. He blamed himself for her death, blamed himself for everything. I'll take your offer, she said quietly, but I have conditions. You're not in a position to make demands. Hear me out. Clara stepped closer, refusing to be intimidated. I'll teach your children. I'll stay out of your way. But I won't lie to them about what I am, or pretend I don't care about them. If Nettie wants to hold my hand, I'll let her. If Eli needs help with his breathing, I'll help him. If Ruth wants to hate me, I'll give her space to hate me. But I won't be cold to them just because you're too scared to feel anything. Samuel's eyes flashed. You don't know what you're talking about. I know grief, Mr. Callahan. I know what it's like to lose someone so completely that you can't imagine surviving another day. And I know that shutting down doesn't make the pain go away. It just spreads to everyone around you. Are you finished? One more thing. Clara held his gaze. I'm not trying to replace your wife. I'm not trying to take anything that belonged to her. But your children are drowning, and you're so busy drowning yourself that you can't see it. Someone has to throw them a rope. The silence stretched between them, thick with tension and unspoken things. Fine, Samuel said finally. Do what you want with the children. Just stay away from me. Gladly. She turned and walked out of the barn, her heart pounding, her hands shaking. She'd pushed too hard, said too much, but someone needed to say it, and no one else seemed willing. Behind her, she heard something crash against the barn wall. Samuel taking out his fury on innocent wood. Good. Let him be angry. At least anger was something. The teaching began that afternoon. Clara gathered the children in the main room, setting up a makeshift classroom near the fire. Ruth slouched in her chair with theatrical boredom. Eli sat attentively, still pale, but breathing clearly. Nettie bounced with excitement, unable to contain her joy at having something new to do. Before we start, Clara said, I want to make something clear. I'm here to teach you not to replace anyone. Your father and I have an arrangement. When spring comes, I'll leave." "Good," Ruth muttered. "But while I'm here, I expect you to work hard and treat each other with respect. Can you do that?" Eli nodded immediately. Nettie clapped her hands. Ruth rolled her eyes, but didn't argue. "Excellent. Let's begin with reading." The first hour revealed exactly what Clara had feared. Ruth was smart, but lazy, coasting on natural ability rather than effort. Eli struggled with letters. They seemed to swim and rearrange themselves when he tried to focus, a condition Clara had seen before in students back in Boston. And Nettie, sweet Nettie, had never been taught anything at all. "Don't know why I gotta learn this stuff anyway," Ruth grumbled when Clara corrected her spelling for the third time. "Ain't like I'm going to be some fancy city lady." Learning isn't about being fancy. It's about having choices. What choices? I'm gonna marry some rancher and have babies and die out here just like Mama did. The words hung in the air like smoke. "Is that what you want?" Clara asked quietly. "Don't matter what I want. It matters to me." Ruth looked up, surprise breaking through her practiced indifference. "Why?" "Because you're 12 years old and you've already decided your life is over. That's not fair to yourself." "Life ain't fair. Papa says so all the time." "Your father is wrong about a lot of things." Ruth's eyes widened. No one talked about Samuel Callahan that way. Not in this house, not in this town. "Don't tell him I said that," Clara added with a slight smile. For a moment, just a moment, Ruth almost smiled back. Then the door burst open, and a man Clara had never seen before stomped into the room, tracking snow across the floor. "Where's Callahan?" The stranger was tall and broad with a thick beard and eyes like chips of ice. Ruth was on her feet instantly, moving between the man and her siblings. "Papa's not here. Who are you?" "Name's Garrett. I work for Judge Colt." The man's gaze swept the room, landing on Clara with unsettling interest. "And who might you be?" "Clara Weston. I'm the children's teacher." "Teacher, huh?" Garrett smiled, showing tobacco-stained teeth. "Heard Callahan was bringing in another mail-order bride. Guess that didn't work out." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks but kept her voice steady. "Can I help you with something, Mr. Garrett?" "You can tell Callahan that Judge Colt wants to see him. Tomorrow, noon, at the courthouse." Garrett's smile widened. "It's about the water rights. The judge has some concerns." "Water rights?" "Callahan will know what I mean." Garrett tipped his hat mockingly. "Ladies, children, enjoy your lessons." He was gone as quickly as he'd come, leaving cold air and bad feelings in his wake. "Ruth," Clara said carefully, "who is Judge Colt?" The girl's face had gone pale. "He owns half the territory, been trying to buy our ranch for years. Papa always says no." "Why does he want your ranch specifically?" "The spring." Eli's voice was quiet. "We got the only natural spring for 20 miles. All the other ranches have to dig wells or haul water from the creek. But we got water that comes right up from the ground, clean and fresh even in winter." Clara understood immediately. In country like this, water wasn't just valuable, it was everything. "Your father never mentioned this." "Papa doesn't mention lots of things." Ruth's voice was bitter. "He just handles it all himself, like he handles everything. Like we don't deserve to know what's happening to our own home." That evening, when Samuel finally returned from the range, Clara met him at the door. "A man came by today, Garrett. Said Judge Colt wants to see you tomorrow." Samuel's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "I'll handle it." "Ruth told me about the water rights, about how Colt's been trying to buy the ranch." "Ruth talks too much. She's scared, Samuel. They're all scared, and they don't understand why. They don't need to understand. They need to trust me." "Trust goes both ways." Samuel pushed past her into the house. "I said I'll handle it." Clara watched him disappear into his room door, closing firmly behind him. Whatever was happening with Judge Colt, Samuel clearly had no intention of sharing it with her. But Ruth's frightened face, stayed with Clara long into the night. These children deserved to know what threatened their home. They deserved a father who let them in instead of shutting them out. And Clara was starting to realize that she might be the only one willing to force that door open. The next 2 weeks settled into routine. Clara taught lessons every morning, reading, writing, arithmetic. Ruth remained hostile, but engaged, unable to resist proving how smart she was. Eli blossomed under patient attention, his reading improving daily once Clara figured out that he needed to trace letters with his finger as he read. And Nettie learned her alphabet through songs and games, her little voice piping through the house with infectious joy. Samuel stayed scarce. Whatever had happened at his meeting with Judge Colt, he refused to discuss it. But Clara noticed things. The way he checked the locks 3 times each night, the rifle that now hung loaded above the door, the dark circles that deepened under his eyes with each passing day. Something was very wrong. "Teach me to shoot?" Ruth demanded one afternoon, appearing beside Clara as she hung laundry. "What?" "Papa won't teach me. Says girls don't need to know guns. But if something happens, someone needs to protect Eli and Nettie." "What do you think is going to happen?" Ruth's jaw tightened. "I heard Papa talking to old Pete last night. Colt's making threats, saying accidents happen to ranchers who won't sell." Clara's blood went cold. "Accidents, fires, stampedes, people getting hurt." Ruth's voice dropped to a whisper. "Pete's neighbor sold out last spring after his barn burned down with all his horses inside. Everyone knows Colt did it, but nobody can prove nothing." Clara thought about the children sleeping in their beds, about the wooden house that would burn so quickly if someone wanted it to. "Does your father know you heard this?" "Course not. He'd just tell me not to worry and handle it himself like always." Ruth's eyes burned with frustration. "I'm sick of being treated like a baby Mrs. Weston. I'm 12. I can help if he'd let me." Helping doesn't always mean fighting. "What else is there?" Clara considered the question. "Information. Knowing things that other people don't. Understanding how your enemy thinks. Colt thinks he can take whatever he wants because he's rich and powerful. So how do you fight someone like that?" Ruth frowned. "I don't know. You make them look bad in front of people whose opinions matter. You find allies who are also afraid of them. You document everything they do, so that when the time comes you have proof." That sounds like lawyer stuff. It sounds like survival. Clara looked Ruth in the eye. "Your father is strong, but strength alone won't beat a man like Colt. He needs to be smart too, and he needs to stop trying to do everything alone." "He won't listen to me." "Then maybe he'll listen to someone else." Ruth studied Clara with new interest. "You gonna talk to him?" "I'm going to try." That night, Clara waited until the children were asleep before approaching the barn where Samuel worked late, repairing tack by lantern light. "We need to talk," she said from the doorway. "I'm busy." "Ruth knows about the threats from Colt." Samuel's hands went still. "What?" "She overheard you talking to old Pete. She's scared, Samuel. They're all scared, and they don't understand what's happening." "Damn it!" Samuel threw down the leather he'd been working. "I told Pete to keep his voice down." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point, Mrs. Weston? You want me to explain to my children that a powerful man is trying to destroy us. You want them to lie awake at night worrying about fires and accidents? I want you to stop pretending everything is fine when they can see it's not." Clara moved closer. "Children aren't stupid. They know when adults are lying, and every lie makes them trust you less. I'm protecting them." "You're isolating them. There's a difference." Samuel's jaw clenched. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand. What happened at the courthouse? What did Colt say?" For a long moment, Samuel just stared at her. Then something broke. "He made me an offer. Fair price for the ranch, he called it. Half of what the land's worth, and that's being generous." Samuel's voice was flat, drained of emotion. "When I said no, he mentioned that winters are dangerous, that accidents happen, that it would be a shame if anything happened to my children while they were home without proper supervision. Clara's stomach turned. He threatened your children. He didn't say it outright. Men like Colt never do. But the message was clear. Samuel's hands curled into fists. If I don't sell, he'll find a way to make me. Have you told the sheriff? Sheriff works for Colt. Half the town works for Colt. Samuel laughed bitterly. The man owns the bank, the general store, the saloon. He decides who gets credit and who doesn't, who has problems with their property and who doesn't. Going to the law would only make things worse. Then what are you going to do? What I've always done. Dig in and survive. That's not a plan. That's just stubbornness. You got a better idea. Clara thought about everything Ruth had told her. About the neighbor who'd lost his barn. About the other ranchers who'd sold out. How many people has Colt pushed off their land? She asked. A dozen, maybe more, in the past 5 years. And they all just left. No one fought back. Some tried, they lost. Samuel's voice was heavy. Colt's got money, lawyers hired men. What do we have? A few hundred cattle and a spring that'll mean nothing if we're dead. You have neighbors, other ranchers who must hate Colt as much as you do. They're scared. So were you once, before he threatened your children. Clara stepped closer. Fear can freeze people, Samuel, but it can also wake them up, make them realize they've got nothing left to lose. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you stop trying to fight alone. Talk to the other ranchers. Find out who's been hurt by Colt, who's angry, who might stand with you if they thought they had a chance. And if no one will stand, then at least you'll know where you are. Clara held his gaze. Right now you're guessing. You're assuming everyone's too scared to help. But people surprise you sometimes, especially when their backs are against the wall. Samuel studied her face in the lantern light. Why do you care so much? You're leaving in spring. None of this affects you. It affects your children. Children I've spent 2 weeks teaching and caring for. Clara's voice softened. I may not be their mother, Samuel, but that doesn't mean I don't love them. Something flickered in his eyes. Something that might have been pain or gratitude or both. You shouldn't, he said quietly. Love them, I mean. It'll only make leaving harder. Some things are worth the pain. They stood in silence, the lantern casting long shadows across the barn walls. Outside, the wind howled, pushing drifts of snow against the doors. I'll think about what you said. Samuel finally spoke. About talking to the other ranchers. That's all I'm asking. He nodded once, then turned back to his work. Clara took it as a dismissal and started toward the door. Mrs. Weston. She stopped, turning. Thank you, Samuel said, not looking up. For caring about them, even if you shouldn't. Clara didn't trust herself to speak. She simply nodded and walked out into the cold, her heart doing something complicated that she didn't want to examine too closely. 3 days later, the first accident happened. Clara was in the middle of teaching Nettie her numbers when they heard the gunshot. Single shot closed somewhere near the barn. Stay here, Clara ordered, moving toward the door. But Mrs. Weston, Eli started. Stay. Watch your sisters. She grabbed the rifle from above the door, something Samuel had taught her to do after their conversation about Colt, and stepped onto the porch. Samuel was already running from the corral, his face white with shock. What happened? Clara called. Someone shot one of the horses. Samuel's voice was strangled. My best mare. Shot her right through the head. Did you see who? No, they were gone by the time I got there. Samuel stopped at the porch steps, his breath coming in ragged gasps. But they left something. Nailed to the barn door. He held up a piece of paper. Clara took it with trembling hands. The message was simple. 5 words in crude handwriting. Next time it's the kids. The children appeared in the doorway behind Clara. Nettie was crying, though she didn't seem to understand why. Eli's face was pale as milk. And Ruth. Ruth looked at that note with an expression far too old for her 12 years. "Papa," Ruth said quietly, "what are we going to do?" Samuel stared at the note, then at his children, then at Clara. For the first time since she'd known him, he looked completely lost. "I don't know," he admitted. "God help me, I don't know." Clara made a decision in that moment. Maybe it wasn't her place. Maybe it wasn't her fight. But those three children were looking at their father like he was supposed to save them, and he was drowning right in front of their eyes. Someone had to do something. "I do," Clara said. "We fight back. Together. All of us." Samuel's head snapped up. "You're not part of this family." "Maybe not, but I'm part of this fight now." Clara crumpled the threatening note in her fist. "Colt wants you scared and alone, so we don't give him that. We get loud. We get angry. We make sure everyone in this territory knows exactly what he's doing. That'll make him come after us harder. He's already coming after you." Clara's voice was fierce. "At least this way you won't be facing him in the dark." Ruth stepped forward, positioning herself beside Clara. "She's right, Papa. We can't just wait for them to hurt us again." "Ruth, Mama would have fought." Ruth's chin lifted. She would have done something not just hidden and hoped the bad men went away. The mention of Sarah seemed to strike Samuel like a physical blow. He stood there caught between the memory of his dead wife and the reality of his living children, torn apart by grief and fear, and something else, something that looked like the beginning of hope. "You really think we can win this?" he asked Clara. "I think we can try, and I think trying is better than waiting to die." Samuel looked at his children, at Ruth's defiant stance, at Eli's quiet determination, at Nettie's tearful trust. Then he looked at Clara. This woman he'd rejected, this stranger who'd somehow become the heart of his broken family. "All right," he said finally. "We fight." Ruth let out a breath she'd been holding. Eli nodded solemnly, and Nettie, sweet Nettie, ran to her father and threw her arms around his legs. "We're gonna be okay," she declared with 4-year-old certainty. "Miss Clara's gonna help us, and we're gonna be okay." Samuel's hand came down to rest on his daughter's head, gentle, despite its roughness. "Yeah, Nettie," he said quietly, his eyes meeting Clara's over the child's golden curls. "Maybe we are." The next morning, Samuel rode out before dawn. Not to work the cattle or check the fences, but to visit old Pete Martinez, the rancher whose neighbor had lost everything to Colt's men. Clara watched him go from the kitchen window, coffee growing cold in her hands. "He's really doing it." Ruth appeared beside her, voice hushed with disbelief. "He's actually asking for help." "Don't sound so surprised." "You don't know my papa. He ain't asked for help with anything since Mama died." Ruth paused. "Maybe longer." Samuel returned at midday with news that made Clara's heart lift. "Pete's in," he announced, stamping snow from his boots. "Says he's been waiting for someone to stand up. Got names of 6 other ranchers who might join us. We're meeting tomorrow night at his place." "That's wonderful." "It's a start." Samuel's jaw tightened. "But Colt's got ears everywhere. Word gets back to him about what we're planning, things could get worse before they get better." "Then we'll be careful." "We'll be more than careful." Samuel looked at the children gathered around the table. "From now on, nobody goes anywhere alone. Not to the barn, not to the outhouse, nowhere. Understand?" Ruth nodded grimly. Eli's face was pale, but determined. Only Nettie seemed confused. "Why, Papa?" "Because I said so." Samuel's voice softened slightly. "Just for a little while, Nettie. Until things settle down." "Are the bad men gonna hurt us?" The question hung in the air like poison. Samuel crouched down, taking his youngest daughter's hands in his. "Not if I can help it," he said. "I won't let anyone hurt you. Any of you. I promise." Nettie studied his face with 4-year-old intensity. Miss Clara promised too. She said she'd keep us safe. Samuel's eyes flickered to Clara, something complicated moving behind them. Did she now? I did, Clara confirmed. And I meant it. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. The rejected bride and the grieving widower, bound together by circumstance, and 3 children who needed them both. Well then, Samuel said quietly, still holding Clara's gaze. I guess we're in this together. The meeting at Old Pete's ranch drew more people than anyone expected. 11 ranchers crowded into Pete's small front room, men with weathered faces and calloused hands. Men who'd worked this land for years and watched Colt slowly swallow it piece by piece. Clara wasn't supposed to be there. Samuel had tried to convince her to stay with the children. But Ruth had surprised everyone by insisting she could watch her siblings for one evening. You need to go, Ruth had said to Clara with unusual intensity. Papa's gonna need someone to make sure he doesn't punch anybody. So Clara found herself squeezed into a corner of Pete's cabin, the only woman in a room full of angry men. We all know why we're here, Samuel began, standing near the fireplace. Colt's been picking us off one by one for years, buying out the weak, burning out the stubborn. Well, I'm done being picked off. Easy for you to say, a rancher named Wilkins spoke up. You got the spring. Colt wants your land more than anyone's. Rest of us are just in the way. You think he'll stop once he's got my ranch? Samuel's voice hardened. He wants the whole valley, always has. Today it's me, tomorrow it's you. Next week it's Pete or Harrison or any man in this room. So what do you suggest? Another rancher, older, gray-bearded. We can't outshoot him. We can't outspend him. What exactly can we do? We can stand together. Clara spoke before she could stop herself. Every head turned toward her. I'm sorry, I know I'm not one of you. But I've seen men like Colt before. They count on fear keeping people apart. They count on everyone being too scared to speak up, too isolated to fight back. And who are you exactly? Wilkins asked, not unkindly. She's with me, Samuel said in a tone that didn't invite further questions. What I'm saying, Clara continued, is that Colt's power comes from being able to target one family at a time. If you stand together, if an attack on one ranch means retaliation from all of you, suddenly the math changes. She's got a point, Pete said slowly. Man can burn down one barn without too much trouble. But 11 barns at once, that'd take an army. And it'd be obvious, another rancher added. Right now, Colt can claim everything's accidents, bad luck. But if all of us got hit at once, even Sheriff Daniels would have to admit something's wrong. Daniels is in Colt's pocket, Wilkins objected. Daniels is one man. The territorial marshal ain't. Samuel leaned forward. We document everything. Every threat, every accident, every suspicious thing that happens. We write it all down, get witnesses, make copies. Then if something big happens, we've got proof to take to the federal authorities. That could take months, years. Better than giving up. The debate went on for hours. Some men were eager to fight. Others were terrified, thinking of wives and children vulnerable at home. But by midnight, 9 of the 11 had agreed to Samuel's plan, a mutual defense pact. An attack on one would be treated as an attack on all. Regular meetings to share information. A fund to help any family that suffered losses. It wasn't much, but it was more than they'd had that morning. Walking back to the wagon afterward, Samuel was quiet for a long time. Then, without looking at Clara, he spoke. You did well in there. I overstepped. Maybe. His voice was strange. But you were right. They needed to hear it from someone who wasn't scared. I am scared, Clara admitted. I'm terrified. Could have fooled me. That's the trick, isn't it? Being scared but doing it anyway. Samuel finally turned to look at her. The moonlight caught his features, softening the harsh lines, making him look younger, almost gentle. Sarah used to say something like that, he said quietly. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and standing up anyway. Clara's heart clenched at the mention of his wife. She sounds like she was an extraordinary woman. She was. Samuel helped Clara up into the wagon, his hand lingering on hers for just a moment longer than necessary. I'm starting to think you might be too. Word of the Ranchers' Alliance reached Colt within a week. Clara knew because of what happened next. She was teaching Nettie her letters when hoofbeats thundered into the yard, not one horse, but several moving fast. Samuel burst through the front door, rifle in hand. Stay inside. Keep the children away from windows. Samuel, what? Just do it. Clara herded the children into the back bedroom, her heart pounding. Through the walls, she could hear voices. Samuel's tight with controlled fury, and another voice she didn't recognize. Smooth, confident, dangerous. I thought we might have a conversation, Mr. Callahan, man to man. I got nothing to say to you, Colt. Clara's blood went cold. Judge Colt himself had come to the ranch. Now, no need for hostility. I simply wanted to clear up some misunderstandings. The smooth voice dripped false friendliness. I've heard rumors that you've been talking to your neighbors, stirring up trouble, making wild accusations. No accusations, just facts. Facts can be interpreted many ways, Mr. Callahan. Take that unfortunate incident with your horse. Tragic truly, but accidents happen in wild country. That was no accident. Can you prove that? Colt's voice hardened slightly. Because I have witnesses who'll swear my men were nowhere near your property that day. I have receipts showing I was in town conducting business. I have the sheriff himself ready to testify that there's no evidence of foul play. Sheriff's your puppet. Sheriff is a respected law officer. Colt paused. I'm going to make you one more offer, Callahan. Fair price for your land. Enough to start over somewhere else, give your children a fresh start. My children have everything they need right here. Do they? Something in Colt's tone made Clara's skin crawl. 3 motherless children, one with weak lungs, another with a temper that'll get her in trouble someday. And the little one, Nettie, isn't it, precious child? So small, so vulnerable. Clara heard Samuel's sharp intake of breath. You threatening my children? I'm stating facts. This is dangerous country. Accidents happen to adults. They happen more often to children. Colt's voice dropped. It would be such a tragedy if something happened to those beautiful kids, especially when it could all be prevented by a simple business transaction. The next sound was unmistakable, the click of a rifle being cocked. Get off my land! Samuel's voice was barely recognizable. Now! Think carefully, Callahan. This is your last chance for a peaceful resolution. I said, get off my land, or I'll put a bullet between your eyes and take my chances with the law. A long pause. Then Colt laughed, a cold, empty sound. Very well. I tried to be reasonable. Remember that when things get difficult. His voice rose slightly. Remember that I offered you a way out and you chose violence instead. More hoofbeats. Shouting. Then slowly, gradually, the sounds of horses retreating. Clara waited until silence had held for a full minute before emerging from the bedroom. Samuel stood in the front room, rifle still raised, his whole body shaking with fury. Samuel! He turned. His eyes were wild, almost unrecognizing. Then they focused on her, and something broke behind them. He threatened my children. Samuel's voice cracked. He stood on my property and threatened to hurt my children. I heard. I should have shot him. Should have put him down right there. Then you'd hang and Colt would have won anyway. Samuel's hands were trembling so badly the rifle rattled. Clara crossed to him slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. She reached out and gently lowered the gun. We're going to beat him, she said. Not with bullets, with something stronger. What's stronger than killing the man who threatens your children? Destroying everything he's built. Taking away his power. Making sure he spends the rest of his life knowing he lost. Clara's voice was fierce. "Death is too easy, Samuel. We're going to make him live with defeat." Samuel stared at her. Then, without warning, he pulled her into his arms. It wasn't romantic. It was desperate, a man holding onto the only solid thing in a world that had just crumbled. Clara held him back, feeling his heart hammer against her chest, feeling the sobs he wouldn't let escape. "I can't lose them," he whispered against her hair. "I can't lose anyone else. I won't survive it." "You won't lose them. I won't let you." "How can you promise that?" "I can't, but I can promise to fight beside you, every step, no matter what comes." Samuel pulled back just enough to look at her. His eyes were red, his face wet with tears he probably didn't realize he'd shed. "Why?" he asked. "You don't owe us anything. You could walk away, should walk away." "I tried walking away once." Clara's voice softened. "From grief, from life, from everything that hurt. It didn't work. The pain just followed me." "So you're staying because you can't leave?" "I'm staying because this is the first place in 2 years that's felt like home." Clara touched his face, wiping away tears with her thumb. "I'm staying because your children need me. Because maybe you need me too. Because I woke up this morning and realized I couldn't imagine leaving, and that terrified me, and here I am anyway." Samuel closed his eyes. "Clara? You don't have to say anything. You don't have to feel anything you're not ready to feel. Just let me stay. Let me help." When he opened his eyes again, something had changed in them. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of trust. The first crack in walls that had been solid since Sarah died. "Okay," he said simply. "Stay." The next attack came at night. Clara woke to screaming high and shrill coming from the children's room. She was running before her eyes fully opened, heart slamming against her ribs. Nettie was sitting up in bed shrieking, pointing at the window. Ruth had her arms around her sister's face, white with fear. And Eli. Eli wasn't there. "Where's your brother?" Clara grabbed Ruth's shoulders. "Ruth, where's Eli?" "I don't know. He was here when we went to sleep, and then Nettie started screaming about a face in the window and—" Samuel burst through the door, rifle ready. "What happened?" "Eli's gone." The words hit Samuel like bullets. His face went gray. "What do you mean, gone?" "His bed's empty. Nettie saw someone at the window. Samuel, they took him. Colt's men took Eli." For one terrible moment, Samuel just stood there frozen. Then something snapped. "Ruth, stay with your sister. Don't open the door for anyone except me or Clara." He was already moving. "Clara, can you shoot?" "Yes." "Then come with me." They ran into the darkness, cold air burning Clara's lungs. Samuel moved like a man possessed, checking the barn, the outbuildings, the fence line. Nothing. No tracks in the snow, no sounds except the wind. "There." Clara pointed toward the tree line. A light flickered between the pines, a lantern moving away from the ranch. Samuel broke into a sprint. Clara followed, struggling to keep up her skirts, tangling around her legs. The light bounced ahead of them, always just out of reach. Then she heard a child's voice crying out. "Papa, Papa, help me!" Samuel ran faster. Clara had never seen anyone move like that, powered by pure, desperate love. They crashed through the trees' branches, tearing at their clothes, snow soaking through their boots. The light stopped. In a small clearing, 3 men stood around a lantern. One of them held Eli, a hand clamped over the boy's mouth. The child's eyes were huge with terror, tears streaming down his cheeks. "That's far enough, Callahan." Samuel skidded to a halt, rifle aimed. "Let my son go." "Put the gun down first." "The hell I will." "Then the boy dies." The man holding Eli drew a knife, pressing it to the child's throat. "Real simple choice here. Gun down, boy lives. Try anything stupid, and you'll be burying another family member." Clara's mind raced. 3 men. Samuel had 1 rifle. She had nothing. If Samuel dropped the gun, they were all dead. If he didn't, Eli would die. Unless... Wait. Clara stepped forward, hands raised. Wait. You want the ranch, right? That's what Colt wants. The man with the knife looked at her. Who the hell are you? I'm the one with the legal claim. The lie came smoothly born of desperation. Samuel and I are married. Under territorial law, I have equal rights to the property. You kill the boy, you'll have to kill all of us. And that's a lot of bodies to explain. Lady, I don't give a damn about... But Colt does. Clara kept her voice steady, despite the terror clawing at her throat. Think about it. A man, a woman, 3 children. That's not an accident, that's a massacre. Even Colt's bought sheriff can't cover that up. The territorial marshal will investigate. Newspapers will get involved. Suddenly, Judge Colt's name is attached to the murder of children. The men exchanged glances. Clara could see them calculating, weighing risks. We ain't here to kill nobody, one of them said finally. Just send a message. Then send your message and let the boy go. You've made your point. Colt can hurt us anytime he wants. We understand. Clara, what are you doing? Samuel's voice was strained. I'm giving them a way out that doesn't end with blood. Clara looked at the man holding Eli. You don't want to kill a child. I can see it in your face. You're not that kind of man. You don't know what kind of man I am. I know you haven't cut him yet. I know you're holding that knife against his throat, but you haven't drawn blood. That means some part of you is still hoping this ends differently. The man's jaw tightened. For an endless moment, nobody moved. Then he shoved Eli forward. The boy stumbled, fell, scrambled up again, and ran toward Samuel. Samuel caught him with one arm, rifle still aimed with the other, and Eli buried his face against his father's chest, sobbing. Tell Colt this isn't over, the man said. Tell him next time we won't be so gentle. They melted into the darkness, taking their lantern with them. Clara's legs gave out. She sat down hard in the snow, shaking so violently she could barely breathe. Samuel was there in an instant, Eli still clinging to his neck, his free hand gripping Clara's shoulder. Are you hurt? No, just... She couldn't finish. The terror she'd suppressed came flooding out in great gasping sobs. You saved him. Samuel's voice was rough with emotion. Clara, you saved my son. I just talked. You talked a man out of killing my child. Samuel pulled her closer, and suddenly all 3 of them were huddled together in the snow. Father, son, and the woman who'd refused to let them face the darkness alone. That's not just talking, that's a miracle. They walked back to the ranch slowly, Eli carried in Samuel's arms, Clara supported by Samuel's shoulder. The children were waiting on the porch, Ruth holding Nettie back with visible effort. Eli, Ruth's voice cracked with relief. Is he okay? Is he hurt? He's fine. Samuel set his son down. Thanks to Clara. Eli turned to Clara with red-rimmed eyes. You told them you were married to Papa. I had to say something. It worked. Eli's lower lip trembled. You saved me. Then he threw his arms around Clara and held on like he never intended to let go. Ruth was next, then Nettie, until Clara found herself at the center of a knot of children, all of them crying, all of them clutching her like she was the only solid thing in a world of terror. Over their heads, she met Samuel's eyes. You told them you were married to me, he said quietly. It was the first thing I could think of. Was it? Clara didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because the truth was, it hadn't been a random lie. It had been a wish. A hope she hadn't even admitted to herself until the words came out of her mouth. We should get inside, she said instead. Get the children warm. Samuel nodded, but his eyes lingered on her face with an expression she couldn't quite read. They didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Samuel sent word to old Pete at first light, and by noon the Ranchers' Alliance had gathered at the Callahan ranch. The attempted kidnapping had achieved the opposite of what Colt intended. Instead of terrifying people into submission, it had made them furious. That son of a bitch tried to grab a child. Wilkins was pacing like a caged animal. A 9-year-old boy. He's escalating, Pete said grimly. Knows we're organizing. Figures if he can break Samuel, the rest of us will fall apart. He figured wrong. Another rancher, Harrison, spoke up. My boy's the same age as Eli. Could have been him out there in the snow with a knife at his throat. So what do? Ruth had refused to leave the meeting, and nobody had the heart to force her. We can't just keep waiting for them to hurt us. The girl's right, Pete agreed. We've been playing defense. Time to go on offense. Samuel hadn't spoken since the meeting began. Now he cleared his throat. We need to hit Colt where it hurts. Not his men, not his property, his reputation. How? The territorial newspaper. We send them everything, the threats, the burned barns last night. All of it documented with witnesses. Make sure the whole territory knows what kind of man Judge Colt really is. He'll deny everything. Let him. The truth has a way of spreading even when powerful men try to bury it. Samuel's voice hardened. And there's something else. Something I haven't told anyone yet. Every head turned toward him. Sarah knew something about Colt before she died. Something she was afraid to tell me because she didn't want me to do anything rash. Samuel pulled a worn leather journal from inside his coat. I found this in her things after the fire at the barn. Didn't know what to make of it at first. What is it? Clara asked. Records. Names, dates, amounts. Looks like Colt's been bribing territorial officials for years. Judges, land officers, even the territorial governor's aide. If this is real... Samuel paused. If this is real, it could bring down everything he's built. The room went silent. Where did Sarah get this? Pete asked finally. Her father was Colt's bookkeeper, years ago before Colt became what he is now. The old man made copies of everything. When he died, Sarah inherited his papers. Samuel's jaw tightened. She never told me. Protected me from knowing so I wouldn't do something that would get me killed. And now you're telling all of us. Now I'm asking all of you to help me use it. Clara watched the ranchers process this information. Hope warring with fear. The desire for justice fighting against the instinct for survival. If we take this to the marshal, Harrison said slowly, and it's real. Colt goes to prison. His operation falls apart. We get our valley back. And if it's not real, or if Colt finds out before we can use it, then we're dead anyway. Samuel's voice was flat. He's not going to stop. Last night proved that. It's him or us. Ruth stepped forward, her young face hard with determination. I'm in. Whatever it takes. Ruth, Samuel started. Mama kept this secret to protect you. She died without ever getting to use it. Ruth's voice shook with emotion. I'm not going to let that be for nothing. I'm not going to let her sacrifice mean nothing. Samuel stared at his daughter. For a moment, Clara thought he might argue. Then his face softened. You're so much like her, he said quietly. Brave, stubborn, fierce. Good. Then let's be fierce together. One by one, the ranchers agreed. 9 families, 23 adults, dozens of children, all putting their lives on the line for a chance at freedom. We'll need to get this to the territorial capital, Pete said. Helena's a week's ride in good weather. In winter, I'll go. Clara heard herself say it before she'd made the decision. I've made the trip before, and Colt's men don't know me, not really. They'll be watching you, Samuel, all of you. But I'm just the teacher, nobody important. No. Samuel's voice was sharp. Absolutely not. It makes sense, and you know it. I don't care if it makes sense. You're not riding across Montana in the middle of winter alone. Then come with me. I can't leave the children. So we take them. The room went quiet. Clara pressed on. Think about it. If we all stay here, we're sitting targets. But if we disappear, pack up the children, make it look like we're running scared, Colt will think he's won. He won't expect us to show up in Helena with evidence that destroys him. It's too dangerous. Everything is dangerous now. Clara stepped closer to Samuel. Your wife kept this secret for years, waiting for the right moment. She never got to use it. But we can. We can finish what she started. Samuel's face was torn. Clara could see him fighting with himself, the desperate need to protect his children, warring with the knowledge that protection meant more than just hiding. Papa. Eli's voice was small but steady. Miss Clara saved me last night. I trust her. Me too, Nettie piped up. Miss Clara's brave. She'll keep us safe. Ruth just nodded, her eyes fierce with inherited determination. Samuel looked at his children, then at Clara, then at the journal in his hands, Sarah's last gift, her final act of courage. All right, he said finally. We go to Helena, all of us, together. Clara felt something loosen in her chest. Hope, maybe, or love. She wasn't sure which. When do we leave? Tomorrow, before dawn. Samuel's voice hardened with resolve. By the time Colt realizes we're gone, we'll be halfway to the mountains. And if he sends men after us? Samuel's hand found hers, gripping tight. Then God help them, he said. Because we're done running. They left in the dead of night 3 hours before dawn. Clara helped bundle the children into the wagon while Samuel loaded supplies. Nettie was half asleep, clutching her one-armed doll. Eli moved stiffly, still shaken from his ordeal. Only Ruth was fully alert, her eyes scanning the darkness like a soldier on watch. Everyone ready? Samuel climbed onto the wagon seat. Ready, Clara confirmed, settling beside him. He snapped the reins. The horses lurched forward, and the Callahan ranch disappeared into the darkness behind them. Nobody spoke for the first hour. The children dozed in the wagon bed, wrapped in every blanket they owned. Clara kept her eyes on the road ahead, watching for movement, listening for hoofbeats that didn't belong to their horses. You should sleep, Samuel said quietly. Long road ahead. Can't sleep. Too much thinking. About what? About whether we're doing the right thing. Taking the children into danger like this. They were already in danger. Samuel's jaw tightened. At least this way we're moving towards something instead of waiting to be picked off. And if Colt's men catch up to us, then we fight. With 3 children in the wagon. Samuel didn't answer. There was no good answer. They stopped at midday to rest the horses. The children tumbled out of the wagon, stretching cramped legs. Ruth immediately climbed a nearby ridge to keep watch, her young face set with grim determination. She's got her mother's instincts, Samuel said, watching his eldest. Sarah always knew when trouble was coming, like she could feel it in the air. Tell me about her. Clara handed him a canteen. Sarah. What was she like? Samuel took a long drink before answering. Stubborn, brave, laughed at things nobody else found funny. His voice softened. She used to sing while she worked. Drove me crazy at first, couldn't concentrate with all that noise. Then one day she stopped singing because Nettie was colicky, and she didn't want to wake her. And I realized how quiet the house was without it. You loved her very much. Still do. Samuel's eyes met Clara's. But I'm starting to understand that loving someone who's gone doesn't mean I have to stop living. Before Clara could respond, Ruth's voice cut through the air. Riders, coming from the east. Samuel was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. How many by? 3, maybe 4, moving fast. Get the children in the wagon. Clara, can you drive? Yes. Then drive. Don't stop for anything. Head for the pass and don't look back. I'm not leaving you. This isn't a discussion. Samuel grabbed her shoulders. If something happens to me, those children need someone. You understand? Someone has to get that journal to Helena. Samuel. Promise me. The desperation in his eyes broke something in Clara's chest. I promise. But you're coming back. You hear me? You're coming back." Samuel's hand cupped her face briefly. "I intend to." Then he was gone, moving toward the ridge where Ruth stood watching. Clara herded the children into the wagon with shaking hands. Eli's face was white with fear. Nettie had started crying softly. Only Ruth resisted. "I should stay with Papa. Your Papa needs you to protect your brother and sister." Clara gripped the girl's arm. "That's the most important job. Can you do that?" Ruth's jaw tightened. "Yes, ma'am." "Good girl." Clara snapped the reins. The wagon lurched forward, heading toward the mountain pass Samuel had pointed out on the map. Behind them, she heard shouting, then gunshots. Eli grabbed her arm. "Miss Clara, we can't leave Papa. Your Papa knows what he's doing." "But what if they hurt him? Then we make sure his sacrifice means something." Clara's voice was harder than she intended. "We get to Helena. We deliver that journal. We destroy the man who's trying to destroy us." More gunshots. Closer now. Clara pushed the horses harder, praying she wasn't driving them toward a cliff in the darkness. Then, hoofbeats behind them, single horse coming fast. "It's Papa!" Nettie shrieked. "It's Papa!" Clara didn't slow down until she was certain. But it was Samuel, bent low over his horse's neck, blood running down his left arm. "Keep going!" he shouted. "They're right behind me." Clara kept going. Samuel pulled alongside the wagon, then wheeled his horse around to face their pursuers. 3 more shots rang out. Clara heard a man scream. Then silence. Samuel caught up to them a mile later, his face grim, his arm hastily bandaged with strips torn from his shirt. "How bad?" Clara asked. "Grazed me. Looks worse than it is." "Did you kill them?" "2. Third one ran." Samuel's voice was flat. "He'll report back to Colt. They'll know which direction we're heading." "Then we need to move faster." "The horses can't take much more." "They'll take what they have to take." Clara's hands were steady on the reins, despite the terror coursing through her. "We didn't come this far to give up now." They drove through the night, stopping only when the horses threatened to collapse. Samuel's arm continued to bleed despite Ruth's attempts to bandage it properly. By dawn, he was pale and sweating fever starting to take hold. "We need to stop," Clara said. "Find shelter. Let me treat that wound properly." "Can't stop. Colt's men will catch up to us anyway if you pass out and fall off your horse." Clara pulled the wagon to a halt. "Samuel, listen to me. You're no good to anyone dead. Let me help you." Samuel swayed in his saddle. For a moment, Clara thought he would argue. Then his eyes rolled back, and he slumped forward. Eli caught him before he hit the ground. They found shelter in an abandoned mining cabin half collapsed, but better than nothing. Clara cleaned Samuel's wound with whiskey from their supplies, while the children kept watch. "Is he going to die?" Nettie asked, her small voice trembling. "No." Clara didn't look up from her work. "Your Papa is strong. He just needs rest." Mama was strong too. She still died. Clara's hands paused. She looked at the little girl, saw the terror behind those innocent eyes. "Come here, sweetheart." Nettie climbed onto the cot beside her father, careful not to jostle him. Clara wrapped an arm around her. "Your mama died because her body couldn't fight the sickness anymore. But your Papa isn't sick. He's hurt. There's a difference." "How do you know?" "Because I've seen both. My husband was a doctor. Remember, I helped him treat wounds like this many times. Your Papa will be fine. I promise." Nettie studied Clara's face with that piercing 4-year-old intensity. "You promise a lot of things." "I know. Do you keep them?" Clara thought about all the promises she'd made since arriving in Wyoming. To stay through winter. To protect these children. To help Samuel fight Colt. "I try," she said honestly. "Sometimes that's all we can do." Samuel woke at dusk, groggy but lucid. "How long was I out?" "Most of the day." Clara helped him sit up. "You lost a lot of blood." "The children?" Fine. Ruth standing watch. Eli's resting. Nettie finally stopped crying about an hour ago. Samuel's eyes found Clara's face in the dim light. You didn't leave. I told you I wouldn't. I told you to run. And I told you I wasn't leaving you. Clara handed him a cup of water. Turns out we're both stubborn. Something that might have been a smile crossed Samuel's lips. Sarah would have liked you. You think so? She had a thing for stubborn women. Said they were the only ones worth knowing. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. We should move soon. The horses have rested and we've lost too much time. Clara. Samuel caught her hand before she could stand. Thank you. For staying. For taking care of me. You would have done the same. Would I? His voice was rough. The man who tore up our marriage contract because you weren't perfect enough. The man who called you broken. That man was grieving and scared and doing his best to protect himself from more pain. Clara squeezed his hand. This man, the one who charged 3 armed riders to protect his family, he's different. Same man. Same man, different choices. Clara stood. That's all any of us can be, the sum of our choices. They pushed on through another night and another day. The mountain pass was treacherous, snow-covered, and narrow with drops on either side that made Nettie bury her face in Clara's lap. Samuel drove now, his wounded arm stiff but functional, his jaw set with determination. On the 3rd morning, they came within sight of the territorial road. 2 more days. Samuel said, relief evident in his voice. Maybe less if the weather holds. It won't hold. Ruth pointed toward the western horizon, where dark clouds were massing. Storm's coming. Big one. Samuel swore under his breath. We need to find shelter before it hits. There's nothing out here. There's an old relay station about 5 miles ahead, abandoned last year when the stage route changed, if it's still standing. Then we head there. Clara wrapped another blanket around Nettie. And we pray. The storm caught them 2 miles from the relay station, wind that cut like knives. Snow so thick Clara couldn't see the horse's ears, cold that sank into her bones and refused to leave. Samuel kept driving by instinct alone, following a road he couldn't see, trusting memory and desperation to guide them. There, Ruth shouted. I see something. The relay station was a dark shape against the white chaos. They stumbled inside Samuel carrying Nettie, Clara supporting Eli, Ruth leading the terrified horses. The building was sound, if barely. Clara started a fire in the ancient stove while Samuel secured the horses in the attached stable. The children huddled together under every blanket they had. How long do these storms last? Clara asked when Samuel returned. Hours, days. Depends. He sat down heavily, favoring his injured arm. We're stuck here until it passes. And Colt's men? Nobody's moving in weather like this, not even for him. They waited out the storm for 2 days. 2 days of howling wind and endless snow. 2 days of rationed supplies and worried glances at the dwindling firewood. 2 days of 3 children growing restless and afraid. But also 2 days of stories told around the fire. Of Samuel finally talking about Sarah. Really talking. Sharing memories that made him laugh and cry in equal measure. Of Clara telling the children about Boston, about her husband, about the baby she'd lost. On the 2nd night, after the children had finally fallen asleep, Samuel turned to Clara with an expression she'd never seen before. I need to tell you something. What is it? That night in the barn when Colt's men took Eli, you told them we were married. Clara felt her face flush. I was improvising. Were you? Samuel. Because I've been thinking about it ever since. About what it would mean, if it were true. Clara's heart stopped. What are you saying? I'm saying I was wrong to tear up that contract. Wrong to push you away. Wrong to think I could protect myself from feeling anything by never letting anyone in. Samuel's voice was rough with emotion. I'm saying that somewhere in the past weeks you stopped being a stranger I was stuck with and started being someone I can't imagine living without. Samuel, you're still recovering. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in 2 years. He reached for her hand. Clara, I know the timing is terrible. I know we're running for our lives and everything is chaos. But I also know that if something happens, if we don't make it, I don't want to die without telling you. Telling me what? That I love you. The words came out broken, desperate, terrified. That I don't want you to leave in spring. That I want you to stay not as a teacher or a governess, but as my wife. As their mother. Clara stared at him, her mind reeling. 3 months ago, she'd stepped off a stagecoach into rejection and humiliation. Now this same man was declaring his love, offering everything she'd traveled 2,000 miles to find. I can't give you more children, she whispered. The doctor said, I don't need more children. I need you. Samuel's hand cupped her face. I need someone who will fight for this family. Who will stand beside me when everything goes wrong? Who will love my children like they're her own? I already do. I know. That's why I love you. Tears streamed down Clara's face. I love you too. I tried not to. Told myself it was foolish. But I couldn't stop. Samuel kissed her, then gentle and fierce, and full of everything they'd both been afraid to feel. Clara kissed him back, letting go of all her carefully constructed defenses, letting herself want something she'd convinced herself she could never have. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he said. Not because you're stuck here, not because the children need you. Marry me because you want to. Yes. The word came out strong and certain. Yes, I'll marry you. Samuel's smile was the most beautiful thing Clara had ever seen. Storm's supposed to break by morning, he said. We'll be in Helena in 2 days. Find a preacher. Make it official. And Colt? We destroy him first. Then we build our life. They kissed again, sealing the promise, and Clara thought that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be all right. The storm broke at dawn. They pushed on immediately, the horses rested, the family renewed. Samuel drove with one hand, his other clasped tight around Clara's. The children seemed to sense the change between the adults, exchanging knowing glances and barely suppressed smiles. Does this mean Miss Clara is staying forever? Nettie asked from the wagon bed. Yes, Nettie. Samuel's voice was warm. Forever. And she's going to be our mama, if she wants to be. Nettie turned to Clara with enormous, hopeful eyes. Do you want to be? Clara felt tears prick her eyes again. More than anything in the world. Nettie launched herself forward, throwing her arms around Clara's neck. I knew it. I knew you'd stay. I told Ruth and she said I was being a baby. But I knew. I didn't say that, Ruth protested, but she was smiling too. Even Eli's solemn face had cracked into a grin. Does this mean we won? It means we're winning, Samuel said. But the fight's not over yet. They reached the outskirts of Helena the following afternoon. Clara had never been so relieved to see a town in her life. Buildings, people, civilization, safety, or so she thought. Samuel. Ruth's voice was sharp with warning. Look. Ahead of them, blocking the main road into town, sat 3 men on horseback. And standing before them, dressed in an expensive black coat, was Judge Colt himself. Well, well. Colt's voice carried across the distance. The prodigal family returns. I was wondering when you'd show up. Samuel pulled the wagon to a stop. His hand moved to his rifle. Don't bother. Colt smiled, cold and predatory. My men have you surrounded. Make any moves, and those precious children of yours will be orphans by sundown. Clara's blood ran cold. She looked around and saw movement in the trees on either side of the road. At least a dozen men, all armed. What do you want, Colt? Samuel's voice was steady, despite the trap closing around them. What I've always wanted. Your land. Your spring. Your complete and total surrender. Colt's smile widened. But I'll settle for that journal you've been carrying. The one you think will destroy me. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence. Colt stepped closer, his eyes moving to Clara. Your little wife-to-be made quite an impression on my men. Talked her way out of a killing with nothing but words. Impressive. Leave her out of this. Oh, I intend to. Leave all of them out of it, in fact. Here's my offer, Callahan. Give me the journal. Sign over the ranch. Take your family and disappear. I'll let you leave the territory alive. Fresh start somewhere else. And if I refuse, then I take what I want anyway, and your children watch their father die. Colt's voice hardened. Choose carefully. I'm not making this offer twice. Samuel looked at Clara, at his children, at the armed men surrounding them. Clara could see him calculating odds, measuring distances, looking for any way out. There wasn't one. Samuel. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. Give him the journal. Clara. Give him the journal and the ranch and whatever else he wants. She gripped his arm. It's not worth your life. It's not worth our family. If I give in now, he wins. Everything Sarah worked for. Sarah wanted you alive. She wanted her children safe. Tears streamed down Clara's face. Don't you see? That's why she kept the secret so long. She was willing to let Colt get away with everything, rather than risk losing you. Samuel's face crumpled. The fight drained out of him. All right. His voice was hollow. You win, Colt. Clara heard Ruth's sharp intake of breath, saw the disbelief on Eli's face. But she also saw the relief, the desperate, terrible relief of children who weren't ready to lose their father. Samuel reached into his coat and pulled out Sarah's journal. Colt's man stepped forward to take it. And then everything changed. A gunshot cracked from somewhere in town. Colt's man fell. More shots followed, coming from multiple directions. Colt's men scattered, returning fire, chaos erupting everywhere. Get down. Samuel threw himself over the children. Clara ducked behind the wagon seat. When she dared to look up, she saw men pouring from the town, men with badges, men with rifles, men who moved with military precision. And leading them, mounted on a black horse, was a man in a U.S. Marshal's uniform. Thaddeus Colt. The Marshal's voice boomed across the chaos. You're under arrest for bribery, extortion, and conspiracy to commit murder. Stand down or be shot down. Colt's face contorted with rage. For a moment, Clara thought he would fight. But his men were surrendering, throwing down weapons, putting up hands. He was alone. This isn't over. Colt snarled at Samuel. You think some marshal changes anything? I own judges. I own politicians. I'll be out in a week and then... Actually, you won't. The marshal dismounted, pulling papers from his coat. These are federal warrants. Your bought judges can't touch them. Your bought politicians can't make them disappear. The territorial governor himself signed off right before he was arrested this morning. Colt went white. That's impossible. Funny thing about evidence. The marshal smiled grimly. Once it starts surfacing, it tends to multiply. Your bookkeeper's daughter wasn't the only one keeping records. Turns out half the people you bribed kept insurance files of their own. Amazing what cowards will confess when they realize the ship is sinking. Clara watched as Colt was put in chains. The same hands that had signed orders to burn farms and terrorize families were now manacled behind his back. Samuel climbed down from the wagon, his face stunned. I don't understand. How did you know we were coming? The marshal turned to him. Got word from old Pete Martinez 2 days ago. Rode like the devil to intercept you before Colt's men did. Missed you in the mountains, but figured you'd have to come through the main road eventually. Pete. Tough old man, risked everything getting that message through. The marshal's expression softened. Said to tell you the ranchers are standing together, every single one. Whatever happens next, you're not alone. Samuel's eyes filled with tears. Clara moved to his side, taking his hand. "It's over," she whispered. "It's really over." "Not quite." Samuel turned to her. "There's still one thing left to do." "What's that?" He reached into his coat and pulled out Sarah's journal. Clara stared. He'd given Colt's man a different book, some kind of decoy. "I need to deliver this to the authorities. Make sure everything's documented properly. Make sure he never hurts anyone again." "Samuel Callahan." Clara shook her head, half laughing, half crying. "You devious, wonderful man. Had a good teacher." He kissed her forehead. "Will you wait for me one more hour, and then we can find that preacher?" "I've waited 2,000 miles. What's one more hour?" Samuel handed her the journal. "Keep this safe. It's Sarah's legacy. It belongs to the family now." Clara took it carefully, feeling the weight of everything it represented. Justice. Sacrifice. Love that outlasted death. "Go," she said. "Finish this. We'll be right here when you get back." Samuel squeezed her hand one more time. Then he walked toward the marshal, toward justice, toward the end of a fight that had cost so many so much. Ruth appeared at Clara's elbow, her young face transformed with wonder. "We won," she breathed. "We actually won." "We actually won. And you're really going to be our mama?" Clara looked at the journal in her hands, at the town where her future waited, at the children who had become her reason for living. "Yes, Ruth." She smiled through her tears. "I really am." The wedding took place that same afternoon in the small chapel at the edge of Helena. Clara stood before the altar in her travel-worn dress, her hair still tangled from the journey dirt, still under her fingernails from the road. She had never felt more beautiful. Samuel stood across from her, his wounded arm in a sling, his face still pale from blood loss. But his eyes were clear and steady, fixed on her with an intensity that made her knees weak. "Dearly beloved," the preacher began. "Wait." Ruth's voice cut through the chapel. Everyone turned. The girl stepped forward, her face fierce with determination. "Before you do this, I need to say something." Clara's heart dropped. After everything, was Ruth still going to fight this? "I've been mean to you," Ruth said, looking directly at Clara. "Since you got here, I've been awful, rude, hateful. I wanted you gone." "Ruth," Samuel started. "Let me finish, Papa." Ruth's voice cracked. "I wanted you gone because I was scared. Scared that if I let myself love you, you'd leave like Mama did. Scared that loving someone new meant forgetting someone old." Tears streamed down the girl's face, but she kept talking. "But then you stayed. When Papa got shot, you stayed. When those men took Eli, you stayed. When Colt had us surrounded and everything looked hopeless, you stayed." Ruth's voice broke completely. "And I realized that Mama would have wanted someone like you. Someone who fights. Someone who doesn't give up." Clara couldn't breathe. "So I'm not saying this because Papa told me to, or because I'm supposed to." Ruth stepped closer, taking Clara's hands in hers. "I'm saying this because I mean it. I want you to be my mama. Not to replace the one I lost, but to be a new one, a different one, mine." Clara pulled Ruth into her arms, both of them crying now. "Oh, sweetheart. I want that too. So much." Then it settled. Ruth pulled back, wiping her face with her sleeve. "You can do the wedding now." The preacher smiled. "I believe we can proceed." Samuel took Clara's hands in his. His grip was strong despite his injury, warm despite the winter cold. "Clara Jane Weston," he said, his voice rough with emotion. 3 months ago, I stood at a stage station and tore up our future because I was too scared to let you in. I called you broken. I pushed you away. I did everything I could to protect myself from feeling anything." Clara's tears fell faster. "But you wouldn't let me hide," Samuel continued. "You fought your way into my family. You saved my son. You stood beside me against a man who wanted to destroy everything I love. You showed me that being broken isn't the end. It's just the beginning of becoming something new." He lifted her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. I don't deserve you, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you deserve. I love you, Clara. Today, tomorrow, every day until I die. Clara couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight, her heart too full. Your turn, ma'am, the preacher prompted gently. She found her voice somehow. Samuel Callahan. I came to Wyoming expecting nothing. My husband was dead. My baby was gone. My family had thrown me away. I thought I was damaged goods, a woman no one would ever want. Samuel's hands tightened on hers. Then I met your children. 3 broken hearts that somehow made room for one more. And I met you, this stubborn, impossible, infuriating man who pushed me away and then couldn't stop pulling me back. A laugh escaped through her tears. You taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about showing up when things get hard and refusing to leave when it would be easier to go. You gave me a reason to fight again, a reason to live again. She reached up and touched his face. I love you, Samuel, not despite your wounds, but because of them. Because you kept going even when it hurt. Because you loved your children enough to risk your heart again. Because you chose me when you didn't have to. I'll always choose you, he whispered. The preacher cleared his throat. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Samuel kissed her, and Clara felt something shift inside her chest. A door closing on the past, a window opening to the future. When they pulled apart, 3 children rushed forward, nearly knocking them both over. We're a real family now, Nettie shrieked, wrapping herself around Clara's legs. A real family. We always were, Nettie. Clara lifted the little girl into her arms. Now it's just official. Eli hugged Clara next his thin arms, surprisingly strong. Thank you, he whispered against her shoulder. For staying. Thank you for letting me. Even Ruth joined the embrace. Her earlier tears replaced by a tentative smile. Does this mean I have to call you Mama now? You can call me whatever feels right. Ruth considered this. I think I'll try Mama, just to see how it sounds. Clara's heart nearly burst. I'd like that very much. They left Helena the next morning, traveling back toward the ranch that was now truly their home. The journey felt different this time. No fear of pursuit, no desperate flight through mountain passes, just a family moving through the world together. On the second night camped by the territorial road, Nettie asked the question that had been hovering unspoken. Mama Clara. Clara looked up from the fire she was tending. Yes, sweetheart. What happens now with the bad man? Samuel answered before Clara could. Judge Colt is going to prison, for a very long time. He won't hurt anyone ever again. But what about his men, the ones who tried to take Eli? Some of them are in jail too, the ones who ran away. Samuel paused. The marshal says they'll be caught eventually, but they're not our problem anymore. Nettie processed this with 4-year-old seriousness. Good. I didn't like being scared all the time. Neither did I, Clara admitted. But we don't have to be scared anymore. Because we're together. Because we're together. Nettie nodded satisfied and returned to playing with her one-armed doll. But Ruth had been listening and her face was troubled. Papa, what about our ranch? We left in such a hurry. What if something happened while we were gone? Old Pete's been watching it. He sent word to Helena right before we left. Everything's fine. But what about spring? We missed the worst of winter, but there's still work to do. Calving season, planting, all the things Mama used to help with. Clara felt Samuel tense beside her. This was the heart of Ruth's fear, not just accepting Clara as a stepmother, but trusting her to fill Sarah's role in the daily work of survival. I'll learn, Clara said quietly. I don't know ranching the way your mother did, but I'm not afraid of hard work, and I'm a fast learner. It's not that simple. There are things that take years to understand. Reading the weather, knowing when a cow's in trouble, feeling when something's wrong with the land. Then teach me. Clara met Ruth's eyes steadily. Teach me everything your mother taught you. Let her knowledge live on through both of us. Ruth stared at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression, not quite trust, but the beginning of it. She had a journal, Ruth said slowly. Not the one about Colt, a different one, about the ranch, about plants and animals, and all the things she learned over the years. I didn't know that, Samuel said. She kept it hidden. Said it was woman's business not meant for men's eyes. Ruth's voice softened. She showed me once. Said someday I'd need it. Would you show me? Clara asked. Ruth nodded slowly. When we get home, I'll show you everything. They reached the ranch on the 5th day. Clara had seen it only in darkness and fear, that desperate night when they'd fled, not knowing if they'd ever return. Now, in the pale winter sunlight, she saw it truly for the first time. The house stood solid and welcoming. The barn, rebuilt after Colt's men burned the original, was sturdy and new. And everywhere signs of neighbors' care: firewood, stacked high fences, mended animals fed. They took care of everything, Samuel said, his voice thick. While we were gone, they took care of everything. Old Pete emerged from the barn, his weathered face breaking into a grin. About time you showed up. Was starting to think you'd decided to become city folk. Samuel swung down from the wagon and clasped the older man's hand. Pete, I don't know how to thank you. Don't need thanks. You'd have done the same for me. Pete's eyes moved to Clara. This the bride heard you finally got your head out of your backside and married her. That's one way to put it. Pete extended his hand to Clara. Ma'am, glad to have you official-like. These kids need a mama, and any woman who can talk men out of killing deserves the title. Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Just Pete, ma'am. We don't stand on ceremony out here. Over the next few weeks, Clara learned exactly how right Ruth had been about the challenges ahead. Ranching was harder than anything she'd ever done. Harder than teaching reluctant students. Harder than nursing her husband through illness. Harder than surviving rejection and loss and a journey through frozen mountains. But Ruth was true to her word. She produced Sarah's journal, a thick, leather-bound book filled with careful notes and diagrams, and began teaching Clara its secrets. See here. Ruth pointed to a page covered in Sarah's neat handwriting. Mama kept track of every cow, every calf, every season. When they bred, when they calved, which ones had trouble. It's like a medical record. That's exactly what she called it. Ruth's voice softened. She said the animals couldn't tell us when something was wrong, so we had to watch and write and remember. Clara studied the journal with growing respect. Sarah Callahan had been more than a rancher's wife. She'd been a scientist, an observer, a keeper of knowledge. I wish I could have known her, Clara said. Ruth was quiet for a moment. Sometimes I forget what her voice sounded like. I try to hear it in my head, but it's getting harder. Tell me something she used to say, something that stuck with you. Ruth thought. She used to say that the land doesn't care who owns it. It just keeps growing and changing and being itself. We're the ones who have to adapt, not the other way around. That's beautiful. It made more sense when she said it. Ruth closed the journal carefully. She was good with words, made hard things sound simple. You're good with words too. Clara touched Ruth's shoulder. You've got her gift. Ruth's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. You think so? I know so. That night, after the children were in bed, Clara found Samuel on the porch, staring out at the darkened ranch. You're thinking about her, Clara said, settling beside him. I'm always thinking about her. Does that bother you? No. Clara took his hand. She was your wife, the mother of your children. She should be part of our lives. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. I used to think that loving you meant betraying her. That if I let myself feel something for another woman, it meant what we had didn't matter. And now I think she'd be furious if I spent the rest of my life alone. Samuel laughed softly. She was practical like that. Would have said I was being a fool wasting time on grief when there was living to do. She sounds practical. She was everything. Practical and dreamy. Tough and gentle. Strong and soft. Samuel's voice caught. I'll never stop loving her, Clara. I need you to understand that. I know. I don't want you to stop. Clara leaned into his shoulder. We don't have to pretend the past doesn't exist. We just have to make room for the future. When did you get so wise? Somewhere between Boston and here. The journey changes you. Samuel turned to face her, his expression serious. I never apologized properly. For that first day. For tearing up the contract. For calling you broken. Clara finished the word he couldn't say. You did apologize. Multiple times. Words don't fix everything. No, actions do. And you've shown me every day since then that you didn't mean it. Clara cupped his face in her hands. I'm not broken, Samuel. Neither are you. We're just healing, slowly, together. He kissed her, then soft and sweet, and Clara thought that maybe finally she understood what home meant. Spring came slowly to Wyoming. The snow melted in patches revealing brown grass that would turn green in weeks. Calves were born wobbly and wet, their mothers watching with fierce protective eyes. The world came alive again, and with it, the ranch. Clara threw herself into the work. She learned to birth calves and mend fences. She learned which plants were medicine and which were poison. She learned to read the sky for storms and the ground for water. And she learned to be a mother. Eli's cough returned with the spring thaw, but Clara was ready. She prepared steam treatments and herbal teas, sat with him through the worst nights, helped him breathe when panic threatened to overwhelm him. You're better at this than the doctor, Eli said one morning, his voice still rough from a long night. I'm not better. I just have more time. Papa says you have a gift. Clara smiled. Your papa is biased. He says you saved my life, back when you first came. You saved yourself. I just helped. Eli considered this. Can you teach me the medicine stuff, in case someone else gets sick and needs help? Clara's heart swelled. I would love that. Nettie's needs were different. She craved touch attention, the constant reassurance that Clara wasn't going anywhere. So Clara braided her hair every morning, told her stories every night, let her help with every task, no matter how small. Mama Clara? Nettie asked one afternoon while they were hanging laundry. Yes, sweetheart. Will you have babies? Real babies, I mean. Ones that grow in your tummy. The question hit Clara like a physical blow. She'd known it would come eventually, but the directness still caught her off guard. I can't have babies, Nettie. My body doesn't work that way anymore. Oh. Nettie processed this. Is that why you were sad before? Before you came here? Partly, yes. But you're not sad now. Clara looked at the little girl, all golden curls and earnest eyes. No, sweetheart. I'm not sad now. Because I have you, and Eli, and Ruth. That's better than any babies I could have made. Nettie beamed. Really, better than real babies. You are real babies. Just bigger ones. Clara kissed her forehead. And much more interesting. Nettie giggled and returned to her laundry content with this answer. But the conversation stayed with Clara for days, stirring up old grief she thought she'd buried. Ruth found her crying by the creek a week later. What's wrong? The girl's voice was sharp with alarm. Did something happen? Is Papa hurt? No, everyone's fine. Clara wiped her eyes quickly. I'm just being foolish. You're never foolish. Ruth sat down beside her close but not touching. Tell me. It's nothing. Old sadness about old things. The baby, Ruth asked quietly. The one you lost. Clara looked at her in surprise. How did you know about that? Papa told me, after the wedding. He said you'd been through something terrible and I should be patient with you the way you'd been patient with me. Your papa talks too much. Your papa talks just enough. Ruth's voice softened. I know what it's like. Missing someone you never got to keep. I think about the little brother or sister Nettie might have had if Mama had lived. I think about all the things that could have been different. That's a heavy burden for someone your age. Maybe. But it makes me understand things other kids don't. Ruth finally reached out, taking Clara's hand. You're not foolish for crying. You're just human. And humans hurt sometimes even when things are good. Clara squeezed the girl's hand. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. Your mother. Both of them. The tears came again, but this time they weren't just grief. They were gratitude, relief, love so big it had to overflow somehow. Thank you, Ruth, for accepting me, for giving me a chance. Thank you for not giving up on us. Ruth leaned her head against Clara's shoulder. Even when we made it really hard. They sat there together as the afternoon sun warmed the land, two wounded souls finally beginning to heal. The first anniversary of Clara's arrival came and went without fanfare. She woke that morning in her bedroom, their bedroom now hers and Samuel's, and realized with a start what day it was. 1 year since she'd stepped off that stagecoach. 1 year since Samuel had torn up their contract and called her broken. Everything had changed. Nothing had changed. Both were true. Samuel stirred beside her. You're thinking loud enough to wake the dead. Sorry, go back to sleep. Can't sleep now. What's on your mind? A year ago, today, you rejected me. Samuel went still. Then he pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her. Worst mistake of my life. It worked out, though. Did it? His voice was serious. I put you through hell, Clara. Made you earn something that should have been given freely. What kind of man does that? A scared one. A grieving one. Clara turned to face him. A man who grew beyond his fear. Because of you. Because of choice. You chose to be different. That's what matters. Samuel kissed her softly. What do you want to do today, to mark the anniversary? I want a normal day. Chores. Lessons with the children. Dinner together. Maybe a walk down to the creek if there's time. That's it. No celebration. This is the celebration. This life. This family. This ordinary, beautiful, hard-won peace. Clara touched his face. I spent 2 years grieving for what I lost. I don't want to spend any more time looking backward. I want to be here, now, with you. Samuel's eyes were bright. I love you, Clara Callahan. I love you too, Samuel. More than I thought I could love anyone again. They lay there as dawn light crept through the window, holding each other, breathing together. Then Nettie's voice rang through the house. Mama Clara, Papa Eli found a baby bird and Ruth says we can't keep it, but I think we should, and you need to come settle it right now. Clara laughed. Duty calls. It never stops calling. Would you want it to? Samuel considered this. Not for anything in the world. They got up together and went to face the day. Summer brought visitors, other ranchers, travelers passing through, even a reporter from the territorial newspaper who wanted to write about the community that had stood up to Judge Colt. Clara was uncomfortable with the attention, but Samuel convinced her to tell their story. People need to hear it, he said. They need to know that ordinary folks can fight back and win. So Clara sat on their porch and talked to the reporter while the children played nearby. She told him about arriving rejected and alone, about falling in love with 3 motherless children, about learning to fight for what mattered. She didn't mention the fear or the desperation or the nights she'd cried herself to sleep. Some things belonged to the family alone. The article was published a month later under the headline, The Bride Who Refused to Break. Clara read it with mixed feelings. The reporter had captured some things accurately: the community's bravery, Colt's cruelty, the importance of standing together. But he'd turned her into a hero, and she wasn't comfortable with that. "You are a hero," Ruth insisted when Clara expressed her doubts. "You saved Eli. You helped Papa fight Colt. You kept this family together." "I did what anyone would do." "No, you did what most people are too scared to do." Ruth's voice was firm. "That's what makes it heroic." Clara didn't argue, but privately she thought the real heroes were the people who kept going day after day, who got up each morning and chose to love even when it hurt, who built lives out of loss and made families out of fragments. People like Samuel, people like Ruth, like Eli and Nettie, like Sarah, who had fought so hard to protect the family she'd leave behind. Heroes weren't people who did one big thing. They were people who did small things over and over, even when nobody was watching. That was the lesson Clara had learned in Wyoming. And it was the lesson she hoped to pass on. The first frost of the second winter found the family gathered around the dinner table celebrating Nettie's 5th birthday. Clara had baked a cake lopsided and slightly burned, but Nettie declared it the best cake she'd ever eaten. Samuel had carved a new doll to replace the one-armed survivor that Nettie still treasured. Ruth had written a poem. Eli had painted a picture of the whole family standing in front of the ranch. "This is us," Nettie said, studying the painting with fierce concentration. "That's Papa, and that's Mama Clara, and that's Ruth being bossy, and that's Eli with his paints, and that's me with my dollies." "I'm not bossy," Ruth protested. "You're a little bossy," Samuel said with a grin. "I'm appropriately assertive." Everyone laughed, and Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Not sad tears, just full ones, the kind that came when happiness overflowed. "What's wrong, Mama?" Nettie asked, her small face creased with concern. "Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. I'm just happy." "Then why are you crying?" "Sometimes people cry when they're happy. It's a way of letting the feelings out." Nettie considered this. "That's confusing." Feelings usually are. Later that night, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Clara and Samuel sat by the fire. The cold pressed against the windows, but inside everything was warm. "Do you ever think about what might have happened?" Samuel asked. "If things had been different." "What do you mean?" "If I hadn't rejected you. If we'd gotten married that first day the way we planned." Clara thought about it. "I think we would have been miserable. Two strangers trying to build something out of obligation instead of choice. It wouldn't have worked." "So you're glad I was cruel to you?" "I'm glad we took the long way, the hard way." Clara reached for his hand. "It made us stronger, made what we have real." "The long way," Samuel repeated. "I like that. It's like Ruth said once. Her mother used to say the land doesn't care about our plans. It just keeps being itself. We're the ones who have to adapt." Sarah said that. Apparently, Ruth's been sharing her wisdom bit by bit. Samuel's eyes grew bright. "I'm glad. I was so scared Ruth would lock Sarah away, never talk about her again. But having you here, it's given her permission to remember. Sarah's part of this family, Samuel. She always will be. We don't have to forget her to move forward. I know that now." He squeezed her hand. "You taught me that." They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling, the wind outside a distant whisper. "Clara, yes. Thank you. For staying. For fighting. For loving us, even when we made it impossible." Clara leaned into his shoulder. "Thank you for finally letting me in. For choosing to be brave. For giving me a home. It's your home too. Always has been from the moment you refused to leave." "I didn't refuse to leave. Winter trapped me." "Keep telling yourself that." Samuel's voice was warm with affection. "But we both know the truth. You stayed because you wanted to. Because some part of you knew this was where you belonged." Clara thought about the woman she'd been when she stepped off that stagecoach. Broken. Grieving. Certain her life was over. She thought about the woman she was now. Strong. Whole. Surrounded by love she'd earned through courage and persistence. "You're right," she admitted. "I knew. Even then, some part of me knew." Knew what? That this was home. That you were home. That I'd finally found the place I was meant to be. Samuel kissed her forehead. "Welcome home, Clara Callahan. I've been home for a while now. I know, but I like saying it." Outside, the first winter stars appeared above the Wyoming mountains. Inside, a family built from fragments and held together by choice settled in for another night of ordinary, extraordinary life. Clara Weston had traveled 2,000 miles to become a mail-order bride. She'd been rejected, called broken left, stranded in a frozen wilderness. She'd watched a man tear up their future and walk away. But she'd stayed. She'd fought. She'd loved. And in the end, she'd found something better than the acceptance she'd been seeking. She'd found family. She'd found purpose. She'd found herself. The woman who arrived broken had become the heart of a home. The bride no one wanted had become the mother 3 children chose. And that, Clara thought as she drifted toward sleep in her husband's arms, was the greatest love story of all. Not the one that began with passion, but the one that grew from ashes built day by day, choice by choice, until it became something unbreakable. She had come to Wyoming looking for a husband. She had found something infinitely better. She had found home.